One Kai crossed the ballroom event and stopped in front of her. Close enough. Say that again. She looked him up and down, then smiled. I was simply teaching this nobody her. The slap landed before she finished the sentence. The room went quiet. 100 people holding champagne glasses forgot how to breathe. And in that silence, while Jade High stood there with her hand pressed to her cheek and her earring on the floor, she finally understood one thing. The woman she had humiliated in front of everyone was his. And by the end, Jade High, daughter of one of the most powerful family in the city, would understand exactly what it meant to say the wrong thing to the wrong woman. There were two kinds of power in this city. The kind that showed up in newspaper headlines and charity galas and handshakes photographed for the front page. And the kind that never showed up anywhere, because it didn't need to. More like when you operated at a certain level, the city already knew your name, and already understood what you are. One Kai was the second kind. He had built his ruthless mafia empire over 12 years, without the theatrics that got other men killed or arrested. He didn't have enemies so much as he had people who had once been foolish enough to become his enemies, and who no longer were, because they no longer were much of anything. The city's underworld fear him.
Hail the Mafia King! Long live the king!
He was an unpredictable man. You mess up, you get your consequences, and no matter who you are. One Kai is the one man who dare not cross, except you have a death wish. And Mercy, his woman, his constant, the one person who had seen every version of him and stayed, moved through his world the same way he did. Quietly. She didn't carry his name like a shield, nor brag about being the woman of the most feared man in the city. She didn't need to do all of that. That was exactly the problem, the Ringtonstyle Gala. The Ringtonstyle event happened every year in the same venue, with the same faces, expensive champagne, and the highly unspoken rules about who mattered and who didn't. Mercy knew those rules. She just didn't live by them. She walked in wearing a deep burgundy dress, nothing loud, nothing that begged for attention. She wasn't there to perform. One Kai had asked her to come early, hold the table, stay visible. He had a meeting running long across town and would arrive within the hour. Simple enough. She'd done it before. She took a glass of water from a passing tray and scanned the room. Politicians, old money, corporate heirs. The usual assembling of a city that had decided a long time ago who its important people were. Mercy moved through it the way she moved through most spaces, present but unhurried, taking up exactly the room she needed and not a fraction more. What she didn't expect was Jade High. Jade was standing near the entrance like she owned the door. Two women flanked her, the kind of friends who existed to laugh and agree. Jade herself was dressed in white that was obvious recent most expensive Dior designer, and she wore it with the particular confidence of someone who had never once had to consider a price tag in their life. She watched Mercy walk in. Mercy felt the stare. She didn't slow down. Who invited a low class? Jade murmured to the woman on her left, not quietly enough. Mercy kept walking. I'm serious, Jade continued louder now. This isn't that kind of event. One of her friends laughed, a small, sharp sound that was designed to carry. Mercy stopped. She turned slowly and looked directly at Jade, not with anger, with the particular steadiness of someone who has decided they are not going to give this moment more energy than it deserves. That steadiness seemed to irritate Jade more than a reaction would have. She stepped forward. Excuse me. Yes, do you need help? Mercy said simply. This is a private event, invitations only, and how dare you say if I need help? I have one, Mercy replied. Jade's smile thinned at the edges. Really? From whom? Mercy didn't answer that. She didn't owe this woman a name. She turned to keep walking, and that was the moment Jade decided she wasn't done. Women like you don't belong here. Loud, deliberate. The conversations nearest to them dropped first, then the ones further away caught the silence and followed it. Within seconds, half the room was watching. Mercy stood very still. Her jaw was set. She looked straight ahead and didn't move. But she didn't speak, because there was nothing she could say in that room, surrounded by those people, that would land the way it needed to. So she stood her ground and said nothing. Jade turned back to her friends with a satisfied expression. One of them covered a smile. The other looked slightly uncomfortable, as if some part of her understood that what had just happened was going to have a shape to it that wasn't clear yet. She was right about that. Across the room, one Kai had just walked in. He'd arrived early. The meeting had ended faster than expected. He saw Mercy before he saw anything else, like he always did. And he saw her standing still in the way she only stood when she was holding something down that wanted very badly to come up. He followed her eyeline. He found Jade. He read the room in under 3 seconds. He handed his jacket to the associate beside him. "Stay here," he said quietly. He set his glass down on the nearest surface and began walking. The thing about one Kai was that he didn't change when he moved through a room like this. He didn't harden or perform, neither does he announce himself. He simply walked, and something about the way he walked made people step aside without being asked. Some instinct in the body that recognized certain presences and made room for them automatically. By the time he reached the center of the room, a loose corridor had formed without anyone meaning to form it. Jade saw him coming. She didn't know who he was. She only saw a tall, well-dressed Korean man crossing the floor with the kind of absolute directional certainty that either meant security or importance. She assumed security. She prepared her most dismissive expression. He stopped directly in front of her. Close. He was a full head taller, and he looked at her the way you look at something you are about to correct. "What did you say to her? Say it again." In a calm voice that had never needed volume to be heard. Jade blinked. For 1 second, just one, something flickered behind her eyes. Self-preservation trying to get through. Then her pride closed the door on it. She lifted her chin, looked him up and down. "I was simply teaching this nobody her place." The slap landed before she finished the sentence. Not a warning tap. A full, palm, open-handed slap that snapped her head sideways and sent one of her earrings skating across the floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the silence that followed. Nobody moved nor breathed. Jade's hand came up slowly to her cheek. Her eyes were wide and bright, not with tears, but with something rawer than that. The pure, unprocessed shock of someone who has lived their entire life inside the understanding that they are untouchable, and has just had that understanding removed in front of 100 witnesses. One of her friends took a step backward. The other was already looking for somewhere else to be. One Kai leaned in. His lips barely moved. Whatever he said took less than 5 seconds. Jade didn't respond. She couldn't. Her face had changed in a way that all the composure in the world wasn't going to fix in the next 30 minutes. The color had left it. Confidence, too, has left her. What remained was something pale and stripped and very, very still. One Kai straightened. He turned his back on her, which in its own way was a statement, and walked back to Mercy. He placed his hand at the small of her back. She didn't lean into it or pull away. She simply let it be there, and they walked forward together through a room full of people who were suddenly fascinated by the floor and things in the event. The middle distance, anything that wasn't the two of them leaving. In the event, the silence stretched another full 5 seconds before someone finally moved. Jade was still standing exactly where he had left her. Her earring was still on the floor 2 feet away. Neither of her friends moved to pick it up. Nobody spoke to her. For the first time in her life, Jade High stood in a room full of people and felt completely alone in it. She called her father from the car before the gala's valet had even returned her keys. "Someone hit me, Papa, at the gala, in front of everyone." The silence on the other end of the line was the particular kind that preceded storms. "Who dare hit you?" Mr. High said. Jade told him what she knew. A tall Korean man, well-dressed. The 2 associates who had been standing with him before he crossed the room. She described his face, sharp jaw, the kind of stillness that she now understood was not calm but something else entirely. She gave her father every location she had seen his people occupying at the event. The side entrance. The private corridor near the east wing. The parking level where 3 black cars had been positioned. She gave him everything she had observed. She just didn't know his name. And Mr. Hai, a man whose entire empire had been built on superior information, did not ask for it before he decided to move.
Nobody touches my daughter.
Nobody touches my daughter, he said. Nobody. Papa, I don't know who he. It doesn't matter who he is. He ended the call. Hai's chief operations had a file on the targeted locations within 4 hours. 30 men. Clean coordination. 4 sites hit simultaneously, so nothing could be warned ahead. His chief operation had run operations like this 100 times. Clean in, clean out, a message delivered in the language that certain kinds of men understood better than any conversation. Hai approved the plan at midnight. Operations launched at 2 a.m. The first call came in. The warehouse is empty, sir. Cleared out. We have a situation. Hai sat forward. What situation? Static, then. Seemed they were waiting for us. The second team never called back. The third call came 27 minutes late, from a number Hai didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was unhurried, almost pleasant. Your men are alive, it said. Consider that a courtesy. Tell your employer ask the name first next time. The line went dead. By 4 a.m. in the morning, Hai's operations director was standing in front of his desk with the expression of a man delivering news he would rather not deliver. Sir, we've identified the man from the gala. Hai waited. The director set a single photograph on the desk, taken from some distance, slightly grainy, but clear enough. One Kai leaving a building 3 months ago. One Kai, the director said. They call him the Mafia King. Hai looked at the photograph for a very long time. He knew the name. Everyone in this city knew the name. Multiple organizations had tried to move against One Kai in the past decade. Hai had watched all of them collapse from a safe and comfortable distance, privately grateful that none of their foolishness had splashed onto his operations. And now his daughter, his blood, had walked up to that man's woman in an event full of witnesses, told her she didn't belong, and Hai had responded by sending 30 men into One Kai's territory in the middle of the night, without even knowing who he was declaring war on. He picked up his phone and called his daughter, Jade. She answered, still awake, still replaying the evening. You foolish girl, do you want to cost me everything I've built? The man who hit you, Hai said quietly, his name is One Kai, the Mafia King himself. Silence. Papa. Get dressed, he said. We're going. One Kai was in his main residence when the message came through. Mr. Hai of the Hai family requesting an audience. The word please appeared twice in 4 lines, which for a man like Hai was the equivalent of someone else getting on their knees. Mercy was across the room with a juice in her hand. She looked up when she saw his face shift. Hai. He found out. Mercy was quiet for a moment. His men hit your locations. 4 of them. She looked at him steadily. Did anyone get hurt? Not on our side. She nodded once and went back to drinking her juice. One Kai watched her, the same composed stillness she'd held at the gala, except here it wasn't resistance. It was just her, just who she was, his beautiful, lovely woman. He wants to meet, One Kai said. I know. I'm going to let you decide what happens to them. Mercy lowered the juice slowly. She looked at him across the room for a long moment, reading something in his face, or maybe not reading it so much as confirming something she had already known. She nodded. One Kai sent the reply. They came the following evening. Mr. Hai and Jade arrived without security. 2 people, 1 car, no entourage. A gesture that required no explanation. They were not here as powers. They understood what they were walking into, and they came as exactly what the situation demanded. People who had made a serious mistake and were prepared to account for it. The house staff brought them into the main sitting room. One Kai stood near the window. Mercy sat in the chair to his right beside him, where she had always been, and she was going to stay. Jade saw her immediately. Something moved across her face, complicated and difficult to name. Shame, maybe, or the particular discomfort of having to face the person you wronged in a space that made it completely clear what that person actually was. Hai bowed first. It wasn't a careful half measure of a proud man making a minimal concession. I acted without information, Mafia King. Please show mercy. My arrogant daughter didn't know she messed with the wrong woman, Hai said. His voice was stripped of its usual weight. I didn't know it was you. I did not ask. What I ordered out of ignorance, and that ignorance caused damage I am prepared to answer for fully. My remaining operations, my assets, whatever terms you set, I am not here to negotiate. I am here to settle. One Kai said nothing. He let the silence do the work it was meant to do. Hai continued. The Hai family will not move against you or anyone connected to you. This I swear personally. One Kai's eyes shifted to Jade. She had been standing slightly behind her father since they walked in. Her posture, usually assembled from a lifetime of being the most significant person in whatever space she entered, had lost something structural. She knew it. She couldn't rebuild it by standing straighter. Some things don't go back together the same way. She met Mercy's gaze. She stopped, reset. What I said to you, in that room, in front of all those people. She exhaled. I looked at you and I decided something without knowing you. I decided you didn't belong, and I said it out loud because I wanted everyone to hear it. Her voice held, just barely. I was wrong, and I am sorry. It wasn't a polished apology, neither was it performance. But it was a woman who had spent a very uncomfortable 36 hours inside the consequences of one sentence, and had arrived somewhere that looked like genuine reckoning. Mercy looked at her for a while. A long look that Jade didn't quite know where to put herself. Then Mercy looked at One Kai. He gave her nothing, no signal, permission, or direction. He had told her this was hers. He meant it. Mercy stood up. She smoothed the front of her dress once, calm, unhurried. She looked at Jade Hai, the woman who had stood in that ballroom event and decided with 8 words who belonged and who didn't, and I was on her for just a moment longer. Then she turned and walked out of the room. Not with anger, just done. One Kai watched her go. Then he looked back at Hai. She walked away, he said. That means you walk away, both of you. He moved his eyes to Jade briefly, then back to Hai. Don't spend time thinking about what the alternative would have looked like. Just be grateful you're seeing this version. If any one of you mess again with my woman, I will personally feed you all to the crocodiles and burn down your building. I am the king and she's the queen. That should stick to your head and spread the news to others. Hai nodded. He understood what was being said beneath what was being said. If her name comes up in your house again, One Kai continued, it won't be me you answer to. He let that sit in the air for a moment. Then he looked toward the door. The meeting was over. Hai rebuilt slowly, carefully, in the spaces that One Kai, in his precise way, had left available to him. It took 16 months to get his operations back to half of what they'd been. He never forgot why. He made sure Jade never did either. Jade moved differently after that. Not broken, she was too much her father's daughter to break cleanly, but changed, quieter. She stopped performing in rooms the way she used to. Sometimes, at events, she would see women walk in alone the way Mercy had walked in, composed, unhurried, not announcing themselves, and she would think about what she hadn't been able to see that night. She thought about it more than she told anyone. Mercy was on the terrace when One Kai found her. The city moved below them, lights drifting slow and endless in every direction, the kind of view that made the things that happened inside rooms feel very small. He came to stand beside her, close enough that their arms touched. She didn't look at him when she spoke. You didn't have to do all of that. I know. You burned down a whole operation. They rebuilt. One Kai. Mercy. She finally looked at him, the way she always let herself look at him, completely, without the careful composure she wore most places. Why? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the city, at the thing they had both built their lives inside of, separately and then together, and then he looked at her. You already know why. No one in this city dares talk to my woman in a wrongful manner. And you. You didn't flinch, he said. You stood in that room while everyone watched, and you didn't beg nor shrink. And nobody who stands like that in a storm should ever have to do it alone. Mercy held his gaze. She had known this man a long time. She knew the version of him the city feared. She knew the version he only showed her. She had learned, slowly, that those two versions were not as different as most people assumed, that the stillness that frightened people in boardrooms and back rooms was the same stillness that made her feel, for the first time in her life, completely and permanently safe. She turned back to the city. She leaned against the railing and let the night come in around them both. I love you, she said. I love you too, he replied. Viewers, drop your thoughts and energy you feel in this story in the comment section, and if you're new on Secret Mafia Love, hit the subscription button and join the family. See you all in the next one, my people. Directed by me, Charles.